It's a nickel and dime business. I don't care if you're running the most expensive fancy restaurant or, chocolate mousse. It's a nickel and dime business. And if you don't watch the nickels and dimes, there aren't going to be any dollars.
Burgers, tacos, pizza. Oh my! Season 7 of the No Dishes podcast is here. Once again, brought to you by Visit Bloomington. Check them out at visitbloomington.com. Especially if you live in Bloomington, you'll find out about all this cool stuff going on around town that you had no idea about. Also, please support our other advertisers on this episode. The best way to show us some love is to show them some love. You already know what I'm going to say. Play that theme song.
Hey, say, honey, let's go out to eat. Relieve our culinary duties. With all these restaurants to sweep us off our feet, they're bound to turn us into foodies. No dishes, no dishes, no dishes. We'll have a bottle of wine, relax and have a good time. No dishes, no dishes.
All right, we are here with not your standard kind of restaurant episode, but this is a gentleman that has done so much in the restaurant industry within Bloomington and New York City, working with people like Danny Meyer, Chef Bobby Flay, Jean-Georges. We met a few weeks ago, and I was like, I've got to get this guy on the podcast. His name is Arthur Levy, and he is the president, owner, partner of the Roart Group. Right. Arthur, Artie, thanks so much for being here. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for inviting me. And before we start, I just want to add two things. First, happy birthday. And second, I was at one of the Constellation productions the other night, and I saw that you're supporting them, and I really think it's terrific that you are doing that because we need those kinds of deals in Bloomington.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Thank you so much. What Constellation does, it's just necessary, and it's the arts. And one of the reasons we first reached out to them about partnering is we're like, hey, we're covering food, we're covering dinner. You've got the show. It's dinner and a show. Right. It's a match made in heaven. But all the crew over there is just so nice and so wonderful and so talented.
Well, I actually knew Gabe when he was working in Westport, Connecticut, when I was living in Westport,
Really?
Connecticut.
Okay.
So it was really funny when we got here and we walked in there to see a show a couple of years ago, and there's Gabe. It's crazy.
You're like, what are you doing here?
It's a small world.
Yeah, you're like, you're a few hours away. Yeah.
It's a hell of a commute.
Oh, yeah. Must be a hell of a show.
Yeah.
Well, thanks again for being here. Again, like I mentioned, we had the opportunity to chat a few weeks back, and you've just helped so many people do some incredible things and have such a unique insight and perspective into the restaurant industry that I thought it would be a great opportunity to have you on here and kind of share some of that with us. Can you take us back to the very beginning? You're not from Bloomington, but let's just get your background before we go into anything else.
Okay, so it started out, I was a typical accountant working for somebody in New York. I spent my whole life in New York and the city and the environment, and I was working away, and really, I was just a typical accountant, nothing exciting. But suddenly I had the opportunity to go into business for myself. And I started a small accounting firm, myself, a couple of people. My wife is a quote unquote marketing director. And this is back in the years when there was no such thing in the accounting business. And that changed everything. She was a crucial part of our growth and our success. And one night we're having dinner in a restaurant that just opened called Union Square Cafe, which was down in what was then a crappy part of New York City. And food was good, place was good. And I have a thing, I walk into a restaurant and it's got to feel good. And I can only explain that by saying that the people that work there have to look comfortable. They have to look like they're enjoying it. They're having a good time. The place just feels comfortable. It doesn't feel like they're trying to do something they're really not equipped to do, or they're trying to be fancy. That's a no-no. And Union Square Cafe, when I walked in, felt good. So we had dinner, the food was good. We went back a couple of weeks later. We happened to meet this young guy from St. Louis who had opened a restaurant, introduced himself. My name is Danny Meyer. He's 27 years old. And we started to chat. And in those days, we were sending out a handwritten newsletter. This was long before there was such a thing as email. And Rosann said, well, can we put you on the list? He said, sure. And we went back a few times. We took some people back because we really liked the place and we liked him. And a couple of months later, he called me up. He said, we're looking for a new accounting firm. Are you interested? So I didn't know anything about the restaurant business, and that was fine. He didn't know anything about the accounting business. I sent a proposal, and out of 12 accounting firms that applied for that position, we got the gig.
Wow.
And it changed my life. Because what happened was Danny Meyer became, first of all, the head of Share Our Strength, which was a huge restaurant charity. He was the best marketeer I'd ever met. He was on every television program you ever heard of. He was all over the place. Union Square Cafe became the #1 restaurant in New York City and stayed there for 35 years.
Wow.
And that's all true. Google it, you'll see it.
So what's that metric to determine they're the #1 restaurant in New York City?
He promoted more than anything else service. He felt that if the staff was smiling and happy and polite and concentrating on customer service, not trying to upsell you, and not trying to give you a lot of BS to sell whatever they wanted you to sell on the menu. He felt that was the way to make it successful. Yes, he had a 5-star chef in Michael Romano, and he had great people all over the place. He served a fabulous product, but you always walked out of there saying, gee, this was really nice. I really enjoyed it. I want to come back. And he talks about it. I know I've talked to you about his book, Setting the Table, which I make all my clients read. And for those of you who are watching, it's not a foodie book. It's a business book, and it's a great opportunity to learn how to build a business and then take the business and make it more than just a one-stop shop. It's a terrific opportunity. So because of Danny, I suddenly got all kinds of clients, all kinds of restaurant clients, because they all said, well, man, if he's good enough for Danny, he's good enough for me. And it worked great. Danny was a fabulous center of influence. And those of you who market in the real world know that it's very helpful if someone who's a center of influence recommends you. That's really where it went. It's now 40 years later. We're still friends. I sold my accounting practice years and years and years ago, but the firm that bought the accounting practice still has Danny Meyer and all his businesses as clients.
Wow.
So, unfortunately, I don't get a commission, but be that as it may.
Well, hopefully that was included in the sale price.
Well, it was supposed to be, but now in looking back, I clearly didn't value it all enough.
So what year, around when are we talking when you first started going in there?
Union Square Cafe opened in 1985.
85, okay.
Okay, so we're going back a long time. It's 40 years.
Yeah, quite a while. And then what do you think it is that separated you from the other 11 proposals?
Well, bluntly, I'm smarter. That's I think the sincerity, I think the fact that we went there. He knew who we were. We weren't strangers. And when I talked before about marketing, that's what I'm talking about. You got to be in people's faces. And I think that had a lot to do with it. I mean, it's hard for me to imagine that 40 years later, that relationship is still continuing. Obviously, it's different people now.
Yeah.
Danny's not active in running the restaurant anymore, and clearly I'm way out of the accounting business. But the relationship is between the two entities is continuing, and I think that's wonderful.
Yeah, the fact that you forged that and it's continued through all these years, especially when, I feel like more than ever, things are just changing constantly. So just to have that for over such a long period of time is very...
It's unusual.
Yeah.
In the accounting industry, generally, firms are merging and selling and changing constantly, and so there's a tremendous turnover in personnel, and it's hard to maintain relationships when you do that. The accounting business, whether you believe it or not, is relationship driven. And if you suddenly send in a new guy to be the accountant in charge, the partner in charge, and the owner doesn't like him, well, guess what? We send it out for proposals. Let's see if we like somebody from somebody else.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so it's really good. And I speak to Meyer, I don't know, probably 6 times a year. Sometimes when I need a reservation somewhere.
That's a good.
Well,
good
you
thing to have.
actually had a guest on that went to New York a few months ago, and he called me up. He says, "Can you get me into one of Meyer's restaurants?" So I did. I called, and I got Jeff Meese a reservation.
There you go. Yeah,
So-
it's all about who you know.
Right, absolutely.
Sweet. Well, no, for my next New York City trip, I'll reach out.
I'll be happy to help.
Yeah, you mentioned setting the table. You had brought it up when we met a few weeks ago for the first time. And I had remembered Michael and Galen Cassidy mentioned Danny Meyer and that book when they came on back before we had video and we were doing audio only. And it was this table in my apartment, but not this whole set. And so I went and ordered it on Amazon that night. And I was like, I'm going to read this in the next 2 weeks. Unfortunately, my schedule did not allow for that. But I'm really looking forward to it because for you to say, hey, every one of my clients needs to read this. I mean, that's about as strong of an endorsement you can make.
Well, just be prepared because the next time I see you, there's going to be a test.
Oh, okay. All right. Pop quiz. I'm here for it. How much are you paying for your restaurant's business insurance? What's affordable for your needs? What does your agent do for you that isn't just policy writing? Tony Brown with First Insurance Group has a keen eye for the policies all restaurant owners and operators would love to have. Tony provides risk management and other HR resources free of charge as your agent. Tony has no waiting period for loss of business coverage starting from day 1, minute 1, unlike other carriers' 72-hour waiting period. Tony has no audit for liquor liability and general liability, saving you time so you can focus on running your restaurant. And Tony's insurance carrier is the preferred vendor of choice for the Indiana Restaurant and Lodging Association. Call or text Tony Brown with First Insurance Group today, 812-327-2321. Set up a free review of your current policy and see how Tony can help you protect your largest investment, your business. 812-327-2321. So tell me a little bit about your relationship with Bobby Flay and how you guys were able to work together.
Bobby, I met, he was flipping hamburgers in a joint on the east side of New York. And I like hamburgers, and I went in there and a couple of times was talking to him. And here was a guy who was smart. He really kind of knew what he was doing, didn't belong in this job at all, and he really wanted to get out of there. I happened to have a client who was opening a brand new restaurant and was looking for a head chef who had a background in Southwestern cooking. It was a perfect match. I introduced the two of them. Bobby went to work, and he became the head chef at a restaurant called Mesa Grill. Mesa Grill was a very, very successful place, and it's still there. It's under a different name now called Amalfi in New York. Mm-hmm. And Bobby started there as the king chef, if you will. And as you, I guess, know, he's opened hundreds of restaurants across the country over the last 25 or 30 years, and you could see him anytime you want on the Food Network.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
And he's become a real TV star. He also, just as a side note, is a scratch golfer.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Huh? Man, I'm very, very envious of that. That's one of those things where I like to golf, but I hate being bad at things. And in order to be good at golf, you got to golf constantly.
Okay, I'll tell you a quick golf story.
Perfect.
A few years ago, we moved to Florida. Why is a whole other program. And we left quickly. But anyway, we went down there, and my friend who was there was a golfer, and I said, gee, well, I want to get to really play golf. I really hadn't played at all the years I was living in the New York area. I took 1,000,000 lessons, and I was out every day hitting golf balls, and I was really killing myself. And I got to the point where I was decent. I mean, at this point in my life, I was never going to be good, but I was decent. I could beat these old guys. Right, so I'd win the $2 Nassau. So it was
I mean, that's
fun.
the goal.
It was, I guess so.
You're not trying to make the tour. Yeah.
No, in my head I was, but I knew it wasn't going to happen. And I go back and want to put this stuff on television, and I see, what's his name, Scheffler, and I said, well, I can't do that.
Yeah, no, not too many people. I think Tiger's the only one that could do that. What Scheffler's done.
I got to when one of my kids who lived up north belonged to a country club, and he says, "Hey, listen, we're having a charity event. Come on up and you'll play." I said, "Oh, good. I'm really playing well. I ought to be terrific." And I went up there. I was terrible. I mean, terrible.
Like, I feel bad for this charity.
And I walked over and I said, "I don't understand what was going on here." And it turns out the courses I was playing on in Florida were designed for old guys. And
you had no idea.
And I didn't really think about it. And I was up in Westchester playing on a championship course. There was no way in hell.
Yeah. That's like the last time I went to play golf was out here on Foul, which is not an easy course. The IU course that they have now is incredible, but it is known for being difficult. And not one that you should go play when you haven't played for over a year. And I did, and I lost a lot of balls, and all I just focused on was not slowing up the guys I was playing with.
But I agree with you. I didn't want to go out there and feel like I was terrible.
Yeah,
and that's what it was about. Now, I never took it seriously. I never threw clubs and cards. Carried on. Well, I played with guys that did, but I haven't played in probably 3 years. It's unlikely I'll play again. But I think for that short time I was doing it, for that little whole window when I was playing, playing well, it was fun.
Yeah, it's like you could still have fun. My thing is, I usually play with people much better than me. I just don't want to slow them up.
Right.
And so if I won't search for my ball forever, I'll be like, "Yep, let's just go. You guys care about your score. I just care about maybe making par on one hole." You know,
Right.
That's my goal. Maybe a par every 9, and I'm feeling very happy. Right. But that's few and far between. So can you tell us a little bit more about your relationship with Bobby Flay? Or you just kind of teed up that initial? Had he had an executive chef position before?
No.
So you just saw him flipping burgers, saw something special in him.
Met him, knew there was an opportunity with these guys who were opening up this restaurant that, again, still survive. It's there 25 or 30 years later. It's still there.
Yeah, is it Amalfi?
It's Amalfi.
Yeah.
But it used to be Mesa Grill.
Yeah.
And, of course, Bobby's not there anymore. He hasn't been there in years. And Bobby's his own
brand,
his own entity at this point. He was, while he presented to the world this, I guess you want to say, attitude of, he's a superstar. He was a good guy. I mean, he used to come into our office and we beat the hell out of him. Yeah. You didn't do this, you didn't do this, you didn't do this, you didn't do this, until we finally made him get an assistant and then 2 assistants. And we went from there. I have a great Bobby Flay story, though. We went to the Aspen food and wine event. It takes place every summer in Aspen, Colorado. It's a fabulous event. It's sponsored by American Express. You ought to see if you can get yourself an invite to that.
There we go. Yeah, I might need your help.
I don't know. I couldn't do it anymore, but maybe. And Bobby was there with a whole bunch of chefs. And I was there with my wife, and my son was there, and his wife, and some friends of ours. And American Express had comped us all to go, which was kind of nice. And Bobby was with Rocco DiSpirito. You remember Rocco DiSpirito?
Oh, absolutely. He had, didn't he have the reality show?
Yeah. And Rocco and Bobby were, let's just say, enjoying the fruits of the event. And to the point where they were really, I wouldn't say inebriated, but I certainly wouldn't get in a car with them. And there was a young lady carrying a tray of all different drinks to bring to some table, and DiSpirito happened to bump into her, and the stuff spilled all over the tray, and it was really, mess. And Rocco, he's being Rocco, he took the tray and drank the whole mess.
Oh man, that's they have the at the end of the night, all the bar mats that get all the liquid.
Yeah,
that's like I forget. It's called a certain type of shot where they'll pour that into a glass and you have to shoot it at the end of a shift. That sounds like or like when you're a kid, you go hit the soda fountain. Got a little bit of everything. Called it a suicide back in the day.
Yeah.
Yeah, he had what I think it was just called Rocco had like the restaurant. I think is what it was called. It was on NBC.
I remember the program. I remember talking to Rocco about it and saying, you're really going to have your hands full here because everybody is sitting there, waiting for you to screw it up and fail, which unfortunately is what happened. And he struggled for a long time after that. He
Really?
He was a funny guy. He was a
Yeah.
good
Well,
guy.
I just remember, I mean, I had to have been a young teenager when that
Yeah,
came out.
yeah.
But I thought I've always, again, just been just very captivated by the restaurant industry. So I was like, oh, there's a reality show about making a restaurant. Like, this is awesome.
Well, the restaurant industry is a funny breed of cat. I mean, I'll tell you, I've been involved with the restaurant industry for probably 40 years or more. And yet I have never, ever put a dime in a restaurant as an investor. I've never really gone out to raise money for restaurateurs because I think the restaurant is the most risky, difficult business they could be in. There are so many variables, and you got to work so hard. And whether people believe it or not, it's a nickel and dime business.
Absolutely.
And I don't care if you're running the most expensive, fancy restaurant or, chocolate mousse. It's a nickel and dime business. And if you don't watch the nickels and dimes, there aren't going to be any dollars. We worked hard at teaching business owners and restaurant owners about how to watch those nickels and dimes and make them into dollars. Back when I started, no accountant of any reputation really wanted to have anything to do with restaurants because the theory was, the owners steal all the cash and they avoid paying taxes and eventually they get into trouble, and you don't want clients like that. We taught them that if they made $1 and they kept $1 in the business and didn't steal it, a bunch of things happen. First of all, that dollar becomes worth much more than $1 because restaurants sell and are valued at multiples. So that was one. Two, you sleep better at night. You don't have sales tax auditors or IRS people or anybody else coming to check up on you. It took us several years to go through that program, but we taught a lot of guys, a lot of people how to work that honestly, and ultimately they were more successful.
That makes sense. Yeah. That's
Well, it's easy to say now, but it didn't say
back in the day
It was
in New York
hard
City.
then, but the guy would take out this roll out of his pocket. We had a good weekend. No, you just stole all the cash. And now you can't pay your suppliers, and now you need something. Now what?
Yeah. Again, it's hard enough as it is. We've mentioned it several times on here. I believe 90% of restaurants fail within the first 2 or 3 years.
And one of the reasons they fail is they don't plan. I mean, you have to plan for the inevitable. Everybody assumes it's going to be a home run when they open. And those first week when everybody comes, which is mostly friends and family anyway, and you're comping them, so you're not making any money there anyway. And you think, this is going to be easy, it's going to be terrific. It doesn't work that way. You got to really work it. And the people that really work it do very well. But the ones that think it's a joke, they're not around anymore. We had an interesting thing happen here in Bloomington. I worked with a lot of restaurants, and most of the restaurants that are well known. And when COVID came and everybody had to close, a lot of restaurants didn't open again. A lot of people just couldn't make it. I'm proud to say of all the restaurants I consulted with prior to COVID, they all still opened, and today they're all doing better than ever. Now, whether that had anything to do with me, I'm not so sure, but I kind of think that some of the ideas I put in place about controls and about how you look for profits and how you run your business, I think some of that stuck. And I think if you spoke to some of these owners today, they would tell you they learned something. And it was good. I'm very proud of the fact that none of those guys went out of business.
Yeah, I would be too. That's a great not stat. It's more than the stat because there's people associated to it. But,
right. I mean, it's jobs and lives and
absolutely paychecks, bills being paid, and
right. And it's really been a good thing. And some of these guys are continuing to grow and do better. I'm not still working with all of them, but you know what? They got what they needed.
Yeah, well, I know you've worked with Uptown, you've worked with Jeff Mesa, and some of the most notable people in town that a lot of people look to as models of how to be part of the community, how to be a sustainable business, how to be a good restaurant. So that's cool that you've worked with some of those that people are.
Well, those two guys are really good examples of what it's really like to be a leader in a community. Jeff in particular, I mean, he's all over the place, and he does a great job as a PR person, not only for his businesses, which he doesn't talk a heck of a lot about, but for the town of Bloomington. He really does a good job. And Michael has, built himself a monstrous business there. And God bless him. They're two good guys.
Yeah, they're two of the best. I always get so excited when I see them out and about, or maybe once every other year we get to go grab lunch or something and catch up, and it's always a good time. What I find fascinating, you mentioned like reputable accounting firms not wanting to be associated with restaurants. To be a restaurant accountant is interesting because, again, restaurant people we're a different breed. And I feel like the last thing that restaurant people would be capable or want to do is being an accountant. So for you to have to work with those types that are the far opposite personality maybe of what an accountant typically is, right. I feel like had to have been just a fascinating career.
Most of the successful restaurateurs, particularly back in the days in New York, had some kind of a partner or somebody who was helping them with the money. And those were the guys that we could really target to teach and convince the front of the guy who was the front, the Bobby Flays or the John Georges or the Charlie Palmers, to, be conscious of what this is all about. That when you give away a drink or you give away a free dessert or an appetizer, you're giving away money. If the appetizer is on the menu for $12 and you give it away, that's $12 you just took out of your pocket.
Yeah, not $4 cost. It's
no,
it's $12.
It's $12.
Yeah, exactly.
No, and it's true. They thought about. They used to think, well, it's only $4.
Exactly.
But I never thought that way, And I used to have on the wall behind my desk something that said, "It's always about the money." And if my wife were here today, she would tell you that that's my motto. They're going to probably put it on my tombstone. And I truly believe that. And you got to watch the money. And if you don't, you're not going to have it.
Don't miss Constellation Stage and Screen's upcoming production of Wipeout on stage September 5th through 29th at the Constellation Playhouse. 3 70-year-old women on surfboards, 1 19-year-old hot rod instructor, the currents of the Pacific Ocean. What could possibly go wrong? Wipeout is a poignant comedy about friendship, grief, and the unpredictable tides of life. See Wipeout on stage September 5th through 29th in downtown Bloomington. Find tickets at cconstellation.org. Some people might hear that and be like, oh no, it's about the people or the community, and it is, but you don't have the opportunity to help people, to help the community if your business doesn't exist.
Right.
So at its core, it starts and stops with the money and being financially solvent, You got
to have the money.
Yeah.
One of the reasons restaurants fail is they think they could get by if they have 2 or 3 months expenses in the bank. That's unrealistic. Think more about 9 months or a year, because it's going to take that long to get traction.
Oh, especially starting out. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So what do you think is the biggest key to, you talked about, when you first start and you have all these people coming in, maybe for the first month, even it's more than just friends and family, you have the community coming in to check it out. What's the biggest key to sustaining that initial, brand new bump that you get?
Customer service.
That's what gets them coming back.
You got to serve decent food, but customer service is everything. I've been in more restaurants where the food is good, or better, maybe even better than good, and the drinks are great, and the price is right, and the wait staff is terrible. I'm not going back.
Yeah.
If you bring, if the waiter brings your stuff, and then 20 minutes brings mine, that's not. That shows me they haven't trained the wait staff. They haven't trained the kitchen, and they really haven't made the investment in building a system to make the restaurant work. And it's hard. It's really hard. I'll tell you, to this day, Meyer, and now he's got the Union Square Hospitality Group, has classrooms. And he's constantly, well, not him, but his crew is constantly teaching potential waitstaff how to become a good server. That's money. That costs money. But he reaps a great return on that. His people, you go into one of his restaurants and you'll know it, because you'll be treated differently than a normal place.
Yeah.
And that's it. It's something I've tried to impress some of the people here with, how important it is. Because if you're a customer, you'd love it if they know your name when you walk in. They'd love it. Oh, you had a martini the last time you were here. You want the same thing this time. You love that.
Oh, yeah. Remembering a drink order goes a long way. That takes me back to, well, that was a big part of bartending, even at a chain like O'Charlie's, was having regulars.
Right.
That's how you made your money.
That's right.
You had the walk-ins, but it was the regulars that made it to where your floor was up here instead of down here.
Right.
As far as what do you make. And you get to know them. You get to know what's going on with their families. And it's just also, it's rewarding in the sense of more than just the tip that you get from them.
Right. And well, actually, you really want to make the customers part of your team so that they go out and they say, hey, I ate at XYZ restaurant last night. You got to try it.
Yeah, you got to go see Bill too. Bill's the best.
Yeah, and ask to sit at Charlene's table.
Yeah.
Because she really will take good care of you. And if you mention my name, she'll probably remember. And that helps.
Outside of, remembering the name, remembering the orders, smiling, are there often overlooked aspects of hospitality and customer service that you have seen over the years?
I think treating the customer poorly is the number one, 2, 3, and 4 problem. Obviously, not really worrying about quality of what you're delivering is also, excuse me, it's also a problem. Some restaurants get overconfident. They get comfortable. Mm-hmm. And then they don't have that feel when you walk in. And you know what I'm talking about. I mean, you walk into a place and say, gee, this place really looks good. And these people really, they know what they're doing. And you can also tell when you walk into a place when they don't know what they're doing. And there are more of those around than there are the good ones.
For sure, yeah.
And I try and impress everybody to, just treat people the way you want to be treated. It's hard. It's a retail business selling a very difficult product.
I think the biggest thing that I've always tried to impress our staff is, because there's always, as long as I've worked in restaurants, it's like, oh, your customer service voice, where you go up a couple octaves, but it sounds fake if you really do it.
If you're doing that, smart people will know it.
Exactly.
I'll know it. You'll know it.
Yeah. So I try to impress, like, hey, you guys we want you to be nice and smile and be engaging, make eye contact, but it's got to be authentic, because people, they'll see right through the fake bullshit so quickly. And it's good. It's better than not trying at all. It is good to at least, but the next step is to just be authentically, like, genuinely happy they're there.
Yeah. And nobody wants to hear your life story.
Yeah. Yeah. Having just being able to know when to shut, like, maybe make small talk, a quick tidbit, but don't keep them there when they're, like, slowly moving around away from you, grabbing the spoon.
Or I want to eat, shut up.
Oh, that's true. I have had that at a sit down where it's just like, oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Go away.
You ever do one of those? Yeah. Before I forget, I wanted to ask your opinion on, as a longtime New Yorker. Were you born and raised in New York?
I was born in New York. I was raised on Long Island. I went to high school on Long Island. I graduated from NYU. And I lived, when I was first married, we lived on Long Island for many years. And I don't know, probably when I was in my late 40s, early 50s, we moved into the city and lived there for a long, long time and loved it. It's a great place to live.
I bet.
It was a fabulous place. And doing what I did for a living, right, with the restaurants. I mean, I once weighed 275 pounds, and it was easy to do.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah, you're getting treated like a king.
I'd go to John George one night, and I'd go to Charlie Palmer's place the next night, and I'd go to Meyer's place the next night, and it would just go on and on and on, and they were all good places.
Yeah.
And plus, we had a slew of what I call small local restaurants, in the Village and in Soho. And, you'd go in there and you'd have a couple of drinks and you'd have some pasta. And then, you'd have a couple of cannolis for dessert. It wasn't hard to really pack on the weight.
Oh, I'm sure I would. Man, I wouldn't stand a chance. I've always.
I couldn't do what you do. I could never work at an ice cream place.
Oh, it's tough. I told you, yeah, before we started, 80 pounds in 2 years, and still working on getting back down to that starting weight. But New York, I mean, there's probably nowhere else in the world that has such a eclectic mix of cuisine to choose from on a daily basis.
I'll tell you, Jordan, we've been lucky, and we've been able to travel pretty much around the world. And I pick the restaurants I want to go to before we leave, and I use whatever connections I have to make sure we can get in. And there are great restaurants in every city. I think the best meal I ever had was in a restaurant in Paris, and I can remember it to this day. And it was 100 years ago, and it was fabulous. And we've been fortunate enough to be able to get in. And once we get in, we're fine. You know, having Danny Meyer as a friend was one of the great friend benefits. I mean, he got me into a lot of places.
Well, what city would you say has the best restaurants in the world that you've visited?
I'm very partial to Amsterdam.
Okay. Yeah.
Paris, of course, has some, really good restaurants, but then, you're there for the night. It's a 4-hour event, and you better bring, a Brinks truck with you. But the food is fabulous, the service is fabulous, and I would say those two are probably the best. Although if my wife were here, I'm sure she would correct me. But on top of all of that, we loved and still love and still go to Italy. I almost moved to Italy instead of moving to Bloomington.
Really?
Yeah, I love the people, I love the wine, I love the food. And of all the places we've been, if you told me that, you can go someplace and stay there for the rest of your life, I'd probably go to the Amalfi Coast and to Positano, because we've been there a few times. I love it. Food's great. I couldn't pick out a single restaurant and tell you which one to go to, because it doesn't matter.
They're all just fantastic.
They're all good. They're all good.
I'll add that to my list of all the places that have not been to that I want to go to.
Well, if you haven't been to Italy, you're missing out, because it doesn't matter where you go. You go into a little trattoria in a small town, the food's fabulous and the wine's terrific. And you never heard of the wine, by the way.
Yeah, oh yeah, you're like, I don't know the varietal at all, but yeah. So what made you pick Bloomington over Italy?
Well, the one reason I decided we couldn't leave the country is we're getting to the point where medical accessibility is important. Bloomington's not wonderful for accessibility of medical, but at least I can speak to them when I finally get in. We're in Bloomington because when we left Florida, Rosann's niece and her husband live here. And we had been coming here for years to visit, which is how I made a connection with Michael Cassidy and Jeff Mesa and all the rest of these people, because I was here over the years. So when I actually moved here, it was easy to get them as clients. Of course, they said, "Oh my God, you're here. Can you, see me on a regular basis?" And it was fine. And so we came here primarily because of the family relationship. We also wanted to get out of the cities. We wanted to kind of have a lower key, more laid back lifestyle. And Bloomington certainly fits the bill for that.
Yeah.
The people here complain about where they have to drive, 15 minutes to get somewhere. Try living in New York.
Yeah. I mean, even to Indy. I mean, because I grew up in Indy, and anytime I hear anyone complain about Bloomington traffic, I'm like, it's nothing. There's
no traffic here.
Exactly. The worst case scenario is a 20-minute drive.
Right. Yeah. And that's one of the things that really makes it nice. The people are relatively nice, and it's been kind of easy.
Yeah, and I would imagine the restaurant scene is, it's not New York, but it punches above its weight for other cities its size.
The restaurant scene here is, with a few exceptions, is just okay.
Yeah.
There are a couple of places that are really trying and are somewhat succeeding and becoming pretty good. All right. I'm a terrible I'm a hard judge.
Well, I was going to say your bar is very higher than most.
Way high.
I'd imagine, yeah.
And I can walk in and tell. Again, I go back to that feel-good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And there are restaurants in this town where I walk into, and I say, "Oh, this is not for me. We're here, we'll eat, we're not coming back."
Well, and it's,
but I'm not going to tell you who that is. I don't want to hurt
No,
anybody.
of course not. Yeah. Well, and we definitely obviously do our part to lift people up and, but try to be realistic about, the strengths and weaknesses of the Bloomington restaurant community. And one area that's tough when you're in a college town is you don't have too many career servers. A lot of times you get students. I mean, a lot of our staff at the Chocolate Moose are IU students. I'd say 80%. And so it's tough because once you kind of get them to where maybe you want them to be, they're moving on to something else.
I'm working with a client right now who's going through that problem. They thought they were all set. The kids came in. Oh yeah, I'm coming back to work. Everything's wonderful. I don't know. I have a class at 4:00, so I can't be in there at 5.
Yeah.
And so all of a sudden they're scrambling looking for people, and in the process they're trying to open up another place, and they're trying to staff that, and it's brutal. It's really brutal.
Season 5 of the No Dishes podcast is brought to you by visitbloomington.com. VisitBloomington.com is the best resource for restaurant and culinary information, special events, fun activities, places to stay, and more in our area. We share a similar mission here on the No Dishes podcast of highlighting local businesses and the people who make our community unique. We can't thank them enough for hopping on board. Check them out at visitbloomington.com to easily plan your next meal, visit, or night out on the town.
The kids have the opportunity to say, well, hey, I want to work where I can make the most money. We're going to make the most money at the busiest restaurant, obviously. So the smaller guy, or the guy who's opening up, he's got a problem.
It's tough.
And he can't pay them more because he's in the squeeze. I mean, it's like a vicious circle. And that's what happens. And it makes it tough in a college town.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we've experienced it at the Moose, our fair share. And but I also think it's nice because we get some really, really smart kids that come in and are happy to work, and they do enjoy. Maybe they could go make more money serving or bartending some places, but they just enjoy the environment. To where we get some really talented, smart individuals because they're happy to have it as their part-time gig while they're in school.
Well, that's good. I mean, which means you guys are definitely doing something right if that's happening.
We're trying to,
If those kids want to stay, rather than go to Uptown where it's busy as hell, and but they'd also work their ass off there.
Oh yeah, they definitely would.
It's a problem in the industry everywhere. It's not just here. I mean, in New York, it's hard to get people. They don't want to work for, nickels and dimes and count on the generosity of the customer, right, to make a living. Now, there are waiters at Union Square Cafe who make close to $200,000 a year. But there aren't a lot of them.
Yeah.
And they've been there a long time, and they know what they're doing. And if you go into the big steakhouses in New York, Peter Luger's or Smith and Walensky or Sparks or places like that, where the tabs are really high, because the steaks go for $100, and then you have a $200 bottle of wine, and you got 4 people at the table with a couple of apps. You have a $1,500 check all of a sudden. So the tips are big.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I mean, 25% of $1,500 is almost $400.
Well, you even go to St. Elmo's and Indy. Those guys, I mean, they put in 10 years as a busboy sometimes just to be able to serve tables and to make 6 figures as a server.
That's right. But there aren't a lot of those jobs.
No, not at all. Yeah. And you have to put in your time not making that.
And you better not screw up.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember going to Peter Luger's in Brooklyn, and I'm sure you've heard of Peter Luger's.
Of course, yeah.
Famous steakhouse. And the waiters there, they were obnoxious. What do you want? We're not doing that tonight. They were really a pain in the ass. But these guys were there forever.
Yeah. Well,
they were telling you what to order. So the checks were up through the roof. And in those days, Peter Luger's, you couldn't use a credit card.
Wow.
It was always cash.
See, more recently, I've heard, I wanted to get your opinion on places like Peter Luger's, like Katz's. Do they live up to the hype, or are you better off going to some newer places?
I was in New York a couple of months ago, and I hadn't been back for probably a year. And I said to my wife, the first place we're going is the Katz's. You know why? You can't get that here. You just can't get it. And the pastrami and the corned beef and the coleslaw and the stuff they serve there is out of this world.
I mean, I've watched so many different videos, whether it's Eater or whatever media production company, where they're just showing them take that pastrami and just the juice flowing out of it and how they're doing it and just piling it up. And I'm just like, man, it looks so good.
It's fabulous.
Now, have you been in and tried the pastrami they're doing at Gable's Bagels with Ed? And
yes. All right. Ed tells me all the time that it's, comparable to any pastrami you can get anywhere in the world.
Yeah.
And I suggested him that he take a ride and go try Katz's pastrami.
it definitely is the best pastrami I've had in Bloomington.
Yeah, but that's probably true.
Yeah, it is. I think it's phenomenal, but I also haven't been to Katz's.
There's no place. I've talked to people about the possibility of opening up a real kosher deli in Bloomington.
Yeah.
And we decided that there aren't enough people that would populate it.
Yeah.
And then it's another story. When I first came here a few years ago, I was approached by somebody who wanted to open up a very, very upscale restaurant. Price fixed, $225 to eat. And then with wine pairings, you're at $400. And this guy had the money and he knew how to do it. And he said to me, what do you think? And I said, well, let me do a little, poking around to the demographics of what's in Bloomington and to see if it works. And that restaurant never opened because I came back and said it just wouldn't work. The demographics are such that the town can't support that kind of a restaurant. I'm of the belief, though, that it can support another upscale restaurant. Michael Cassidy and his crew are building a new restaurant.
Yeah. Oh, I know. I'm excited about it.
That's public information. I've been talking to Michael about what it should be. I have my opinion. Obviously, it's not going to be a kosher deli.
No.
I have my opinion about what would work here. Mm-hmm. He and Galen are not so sure. So we're continuing to talk about it. We'll see.
Yeah, I chatted
I'm not going to tell you what it is because I don't want to make this into a vote.
Oh, no, you're good. Well, yeah, I chatted with Galen a couple weeks ago, and I don't think I'm saying anything that's not out there. It's supposed to be next to the CVS across the street, 5-story development. Mm-hmm. They're looking to get the 5 stories approved. The main floor would be the restaurant. Second floor would be a bar.
And a cocktail.
The top 3.
And a private events place.
When I asked, Galen about the bar feel, and he said they wanted kind of soft seating and to be kind of more of a lounge. And I asked, I was like, so what are you thinking for the restaurant? Are you thinking something like the Elm or a high-end steakhouse or something like that? And he said, not a steakhouse, different than the Elm, but definitely not another Uptown. Because
it's definitely not.
And that's because he's like, I've had quite a few people be like, oh, so you're just doing another? He's like, no, like we've done that. We have that. We're going to continue to have that. This is an opportunity to do something new and different. So I'm really, really excited to see what they're able to do over there because they have 2 really talented chefs.
Yes.
And I think that's part of what's enabling them to take this leap is knowing that they have these great chefs in house, including Adam, who's been on here. He won the Bloomington Chef's Challenge here recently and has worked in multiple Michelin star restaurants and super talented dude. So I'm pumped to see where that goes.
I can't give you any information because I don't have it. I don't know anything more about it.
Oh, you're good. I'm not prodding. I'm not prodding.
What they're trying to do. But I think they have the opportunity to really accomplish something that this town really needs, which is another restaurant. It's interesting you mentioned the Elm. I go to the Elm a lot, and I go to the Elm a lot because I like the place feels good.
Yeah.
It really does. They spent real money to fix it up. The staff is very well trained. I'm sophisticated enough that I can handle the menu. I know they're trying to teach the Bloomington community a little bit about more sophisticated food, and I hope they're succeeding.
Yeah. Well, and I know they hired a New York City design firm, I think, to do. Yeah. So it makes sense because you go in there, and when you mentioned it earlier, that was one of the first places that popped in my head is it feels good.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. The staff, last time I went there, Ashley waited on us, and man, she knew just every little thing about all the things on the menu. So Chef Dan Thomas has been on the podcast, and he told us that, at first it was discouraging because it just wasn't really, again, they were trying to teach and showcase stuff that maybe some of the community wasn't ready for. And he said the big breakthrough for him, and he felt the restaurant as a whole, was they stopped trying to make what they thought people wanted and just started to make what they wanted, and that's been very good for them. Better business, better community. For over a century, the Greater Bloomington Chamber of Commerce has been a cornerstone of business growth and community development. They are dedicated to helping local businesses thrive. Their business is all about your business. Join the Chamber today. Call 812-336-6381 or visit chamberbloomington.org to learn more.
I have friends who won't go there with me. When I say, we'll go out for dinner, let's go to the Elm.
They don't think it's approachable enough?
They don't understand the food.
Yeah, we're in Southern Indiana, and sometimes it's like, oh, I want to go something that's very cut and dry.
Longhorn.
Yeah. You're going over to Texas Roadhouse, which is there's a place for those. I actually might go to Texas Roadhouse tonight, but it's not the Elm. They're two different things.
Right.
And you have to have a curious side and adventurous side if you don't already have that knowledge about all of it.
And you have to be willing to try something.
Yeah.
If every time you go out, you're going to have,
the sirloin and ribs
right. Then that's fine. But you're not going to broaden your food horizons.
Not at all. Yeah.
And that's your choice.
Well, and it's something where, you had Finch's back in the day, you had talent. It's been a discussion with me and a lot of my friends where, Yanko's is amazing, but what if we had another really high-end steakhouse? And it comes back to, just the same reason we don't have a Trader Joe's. The median income isn't high enough. The population size isn't high enough. You would need the same doctors and professors and whoever coming back over and over and over to sustain a really high-end place.
The professors here, they're really the people that can support a major restaurant, but a lot of them are cheap.
I guess I don't know enough of them to know.
They just don't go out. And that was really the demographic I looked at when I was looking at this upscale restaurant.
Yeah.
And, you talk to some of the professors and they'll tell you, I'm not going to a restaurant that charges that kind of money. I don't care what they're serving.
Yeah. So just, I think overall, not enough people in careers or, making salaries that support.
And you think about it, you gotta sell that menu 5 nights a week, 52 weeks a week.
Exactly.
That's a lot.
You can't just be birthdays and anniversaries.
That's right.
You've got to
exactly right.
Got to be more than that for sure. So you mentioned there were some bright spots in Bloomington. You talked about the Elm. Are there any others that you could maybe talk about, ones that you're like, it does feel good and I like what they're doing, or maybe they have room to improve, but they're trying and they're on the right path?
I go to C3 a lot.
Excellent.
I like it.
Nice dim lighting.
I think to play for a small restaurant, I think it's nice. It's not too noisy. I particularly like it when you can sit outside when it's not 100 degrees or 20 degrees. But
beautiful patio.
Yeah, it's very nice. I think Allison and Nick do a terrific job. Mm-hmm. And it's tough. I don't know if you've ever seen the kitchen. But
I've had. They've carried our ice cream before. We've delivered ice to them before. I've been in the kitchen quite a bit. And
all right, so how small that kitchen is.
Well, and even before, they've expanded it some. Mm-hmm. It used to be even smaller.
And the product they deliver is pretty consistent.
Excellent. Yeah, great burger, the filet sliders.
And I like... particularly when they have certain fish specials.
Read my mind, yeah.
I also like to go for the cheap martini nights.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, if you can get a cheap drink from Matteo, that's a great deal.
But it's, I like that place a lot. I go there a lot.
Yeah, C3 is fantastic. I need to get them back on. They, all three came on when we were audio only. And so we were wearing masks and it was a different time. So need to revisit them. And a friend had a birthday dinner over there recently and did the salmon. When someone say they want fish, I usually point them to an Uptown fish special or a C3 fish special for really just doing it right.
Right. Don't forget, I come from the East Coast. So, I know what real fish is supposed to taste like.
Right.
And I used to have a house on Cape Cod. So
really?
we used to go get our own stuff, as it came off the boat. And it's hard. When you're in the middle of the middle of the country and you're not reeling in anything.
Yeah, not at all. Maybe some perch or some walleye.
Right.
Not quite the same. The lake fish.
No. Nope.
What about, are there any places in town maybe that you like that are more cheap eats, so to speak? Not high end dining that you like to frequent?
Well, the first place that comes to mind first is Lenny's.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Sammy and Mike do an amazing job.
Mike, I know him for a long time. I know him back from the day when he was working with Jeff.
Of course. Yeah.
And they're doing a good job. And then they're also in a tough situation, but they're serving a quality product. And he's working it hard. And I give him full credit for that.
Yeah, they did. They made a post just like a month ago that said, hey, here's where to park. Like there's this home IU football game. And I thought that was just like, that's smart. Like just think about, it shows that they put themselves in the customer's shoes. And like, what are the things that are going to prevent people from coming to Lenny's today? And it's a home IU football game. And it's going to be, I want to go to Lenny's, but I don't know where I'm going to park. And so I thought it was so smart of them to be like, hey, this garage is here, this is free, go here. Right. And so that was just some little things like that go unnoticed maybe by a lot of the population. Right. That shows they are working it.
Oh yeah. And I give him a lot of credit. I'm glad he's the one that ended up with it. So it's a good thing.
Have you tried Sammy's cookies yet?
Yes.
It's so good. I ordered a dozen.
Can't eat that many.
I know. Well, I didn't. Well, I had them for the staff. I only ate 2 or 3.
Right.
Yeah. But I think I had 2 and then wrapped one in a paper towel for later. Came back the next day and had it, and then just put the rest out for the staff. And they're like, "Where'd you get these?" Because she's doing, Madagascar vanilla, the Mardon sea salt, and
I just wonder if they're making any money on those.
I think it's there's a lot of ingredients in those cookies. It was $26 for a dozen, so I think they're priced appropriately.
I hope they're making money.
Yeah, I think it's a good thing that just shows, hey, we're making a good, authentic product the right way, and just having the cookie jar in the bar, I think it's something that's quirky and cool, and kind of makes you stand out amongst all the other places. Right. Just one of many things,
So where do you go for lunch?
Oh man, I like Happy Thai quite a bit, just south of the Chocolate Mousse on Walnut, right next to the Arby's that closed. Right. They do a really good spicy crispy chicken that I enjoy. Little Italy makes some great sandwiches. YL over there. Have you been in there at all?
No.
Oh, that's that has the feel of a bodega or an old big city. Yeah, and he does like a prosciutto and mozz sandwich, and has a chicken cutlet sandwich. He has a steak sandwich with like some tomato sauce, and it'll take forever to get your food, but it's worth the wait. And he'll chat your ear off. And he does a really good Italian sandwich too, and he'll be feeding you as he's slicing the meat.
That's good. I like that.
Yeah, it gives you that old or big city feel, I guess. Let's talk a little bit, if you don't mind, about your wife, Rosie, who was going to join us, and she's the one that actually introduced us.
Right.
We met at a chamber event, and she's like, you've got to meet my husband, Artie. And then we got to chat a few weeks ago, and I was like, yeah, this guy's great. We got to have him on. But she did, you mentioned being the head of marketing, and it seems like she's been pretty integral to your success.
She's been a key part of everything we do. I mean, she and I are really partners. We've been married a long time. And I mean, we know each other from high school.
Wow.
We met when she was 14 and I was 16. All right. That's a long time ago.
Uh-huh.
And she has been actively involved from the time I went into business. She didn't know anything about accounting and still doesn't. And I don't really care. Her job is to go out and meet people. You're a perfect example.
Yeah, she's doing her job.
Of what she does. She gets us in front of people. As the years have gone on, she's achieved a lot of good stuff. I mean, she was president of the National Association of Women Business Owners, which is a big deal.
Yeah.
She was invited to run for council member in New York City, which is also a big deal.
Wow, absolutely.
That's a big deal.
Well, she was a founder of the Latin Ballroom.
We also we created non-for-profit organization for family business owners called the Family Business Council of Greater New York. And when that happened, that thing exploded. We thought it was going to be a small group of people, and bluntly, it was formed so we could feed accounting clients out of it. But it had a life of its own. At one point, we had 500 family businesses as members.
Wow.
So she left the accounting practice and went to run that thing for the 12 or 14 years we had that. When I sold the accounting firm, the non-for-profit went with it, and they decided the clients weren't big enough for them, so they kind of let it go. We tried to get it started here, probably 5 years ago, and it's a different world now. When we started this thing, we had major corporate sponsors in New York. We had a bank, we had IBM, we had AT&T, we had Mount Sinai Hospital, we had Northwestern Insurance. I mean, big players. They all wanted the family business market. We were delivering it. We would have meetings every month, and you could only come to the meeting if you were a family business. I don't care what else you did. If you came in and you were what I call a bottom feeder, a banker, a lawyer, an accountant, an insurance salesman, you couldn't come. And I would have security to make sure that you didn't get in.
Yeah.
The members, the family business owners, loved it because they could kind of let their hair down. And all the family business owners thought that, they had problems that was only their own. The fact of the matter is they all had the same problems.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody, it was all the same. What are they going to do with their business? Their kids aren't working. How do we do this? How do we take care of this senior guy who's not a family member? He's got to get paid, but we can't pay him more than a kid. What do I do? How do I pay my kids? One kid's really killing himself. One isn't doing shit, but they got to be equal, right?
Mm-hmm. The Bloomington Town Planner is a community calendar owned and published by local residents John and Sharon Martin. Mailed out to Bloomington homes in December of each year, it features school schedules and community events. And don't forget the coupons at the bottom of the calendar. They'll save you money and help you decide on the next restaurant or retailer to check out here in the Bloomington area. Town Planner also has an online calendar which can be found at townplanner.com. Make sure to sign up for their weekly e-newsletter so you can stay on top of all the fun events going on around town.
I'll tell you one quick family business story. I had a client, I was very close to the owner. It was on a personal level, and he wanted to really kind of ease out of the business. He's been running it for a long time, and his son and his daughter-in-law were in the business. His son was a computer nerd. I can't describe him any other way, who was very happy in the back office, playing with the numbers and worrying about production and work that had to be done. But he wasn't the face of the business. The daughter-in-law was out there. Everybody knew who she was. She was the face of the business. She was getting new clients. She was getting new suppliers. And she was terrific at it. So this client calls me up one day. He says, I'm going to pull out and I'm going to make my son the president. And I said, I don't think that's a great idea. And nobody knows who he is. I'm not even sure he even wants that job. Why don't you make your daughter-in-law the president? Oh, no, I could never do that. It has to be my son. It's got to be the family. So what does he do? He fires his daughter-in-law, right, who was really running the business.
Yeah.
Puts his son in charge, and the business goes, psh.
Wow.
It's a 100-year-old business. He calls me in after 6 months. He said, what do I do now? I said, you hire her back. You start with that. I mean, can you imagine what Thanksgiving must have been like with that family? Oh, my God.
Well, did she go back? Did she take the job?
She ultimately negotiated a deal. She had formed her own consulting company in the industry and become a factor.
In 6 months?
Yeah, she'd become really...
Wow, yeah.
She was well known. And so she got a contract with the company to help them on the marketing side. And she was able to do that, and she was effective. We brought in somebody as a president, an outsider, to come run the business. The son ultimately left the business. He decided he just didn't want to do it all. And of all things, he went to become an accountant. By that time, I was gone. But that was the kind of stuff this group. Now, Rosann was the guts, ran this family business council. And we would have regular meetings, and we'd have terrific speakers. I mean, family business consultants, some guys from Chicago who I just spoke to a couple of weeks ago. I think the high point is we had Tom Seaver come. Why did Tom Seaver come? Because the bank that was sponsoring us had Seaver as a spokesperson, and I happened to mention, they said, why don't you get Seaver to show up for one of our meetings? We showed up, and usually we would get a couple of hundred people. When Seaver showed up, we had 600 people show up.
Wow. Yeah.
And he was wonderful. He was wonderful. He didn't just talk baseball, except to me.
That's cool. Yeah. Well, I'm glad we got to, talk about Rosie some and show that, she's very accomplished in her own right. I've really enjoyed the few, interactions that we've had and have gotten to chat. I know, doing this podcast might not be a big deal for you. You've done what? CNN, CBS, Washington Journal, New York Times. You've been all over the place in media over your career.
Even better than that. First of all, I appreciate the fact that you invited me. I don't take any opportunity lightly. And, I hope I give some information to whoever listens to or watches this. And I establish a relationship with you. Who knows what's going to happen?
Of course.
Either for your benefit or for mine. I'm not particularly looking, to grow a big business again. I'm looking for interesting situations. That's really all I care about. If it's interesting and I think I can help, I'll help. If I can't, I won't do it. And it's, and who knows where you're going? You're a young, aggressive guy. I can see several things for you. But, I don't know if you want to leave Bloomington or not.
Yeah. That's always the tough one, yeah.
But, I will put in a plug for Rosann. She's the reason we were as successful as we were. There's no question about it. I mean, when I sold the company, she said, you didn't get enough because you didn't get for me. And to this day, and that was 20-odd years ago, and to this day, she reminds me that was the one mistake we made. And in fact, at the time we sold the business, she didn't want to sell it. She loved it. She wanted to stay in it. She said, well, we're having such a good time. But I decided we had grown to the point where we couldn't handle the traffic anymore. We needed help. So we sold to a bigger company.
You were able to retire, though? Somewhat? Semi? Now you're in a position you can pick your...
Right. My needs are not what they once were. I don't have a fancy house up on Cape Cod anymore, and I don't have a house in the Berkshires like I once had, and I don't have an apartment in New York City anymore, and so I can live here very comfortably, and that's really all I'm interested in doing. At this stage of my life, I'm not growing anything. Interestingly enough, one of my kids who was with me when we sold the practice went with the company that bought us. And he's now the number 2 guy in $1 billion accounting firm.
Wow.
I mean, so for him, and I say it's the training he got with us.
I would say so.
That taught him how to operate till he got to that job. Rosann will say that the fact he was the one accountant that understood what marketing, customer service, and being out there was really all about. He was not, and still is not, an accounting nerd. And look what it's done for him. It made him a wealthy man.
So much more than just the numbers.
Oh, yeah. He couldn't do the numbers if his life depended on it now.
This is my brother's a partner at an accounting firm in Indy. I think this might be the first episode I ever sent him and be like, hey, you should watch this, Well, you've had such a long, accomplished career. We tried to touch on as much as we could. Is there anything that we missed before we kind of let you go?
Well, can I plug, along the way, I had 4 kids.
You plugged the children, absolutely.
Pay for, bar mitzvahs, weddings, a whole bunch of divorces. And I'm happy to say we have 9 grandchildren.
Wow.
And a couple of months ago, we had our first great-grandchild.
Congratulations.
Which is really, I didn't think I was going to be as excited as I was. We ran out, she lives in California, and we ran out there quick to see him. And we're going out again very soon. So that's the good part.
That's incredible. That's so great. Yeah,
that's the good part.
I'm so glad you brought that up. The professional accomplishments are one thing, but family as a whole.
That's just money.
Yeah.
That's And no, the family stuff is important, and as the years go on, it becomes more and more important.
In the short bit of time I've known you and Rosie, it's I've really grown to appreciate you guys, and can't thank you enough for taking the time to come on here. And I'm looking forward to continuing to see you around town and see what we can work on together.
Well, I thank you very much for having me, and I promise if you bring Rosie on for one of these, you'll be here for days.
Yeah. All right, Gary, we'll book an 8-hour session.
That sounds good. Thanks a lot.
Yep. Cheers, Artie. Thank you. There you go. You can't laugh, Garrett. All right, here we go. There you go, little fella. Oh, what another great episode. Thanks so much to Season 7 presenting sponsor, Visit Bloomington. Check them out. Visit Bloomington.com. As always, keep those hands dry. This episode of the No Dishes Podcast was recorded, edited, and produced by Garrett Portinga of Green Hat Media in beautiful downtown Bloomington, Indiana.
No Dishes Media.
No Dishes Media.